Yeah. I know yesterday we made a video talking about how Dave Pagnotta said that Bergevin and the Canadiens would probably go into this trade deadline and stay quiet. We talked about how they're possibly just not gonna do anything, and how that, in my opinion, would have been a wrong move. We talked about the differences between buying and selling, and we talked about committing to one side. Let's explore one of those options a little bit more here today, because as it was pointed out in the comments section of that video yesterday, Marc Bergevin indeed was in Colorado scouting the Lightning and the Avs game. Now, I know reading the comments from yesterday's video that you feel the same way that I do, that if Bergevin sits and he doesn't do anything, he doesn't buy or he doesn't sell, that it would be not really the right way to do things, because it kinda just writes off this season as a whole. It makes this season appear to be a waste in the grand scheme of things. But this article here from TVA Sports goes over what exactly the Montreal Canadiens might have had in store when Marc Bergevin was watching that Avalanche and Lightning game. From TVA Sports, this article goes over how the Colorado Avalanche are not really all that satisfied with Tyson Jost, a player who they drafted in the first round in the entry draft a few years ago. He was 2016, I believe. He went over to the University of North Dakota, was pretty okay there, and then came over to the NHL, and he hasn't necessarily been as good as people thought he would be, transitioning from college hockey to the pro game. Now, Jost is still only 21, so he still has a ton of room to grow, but with 16 points in 55 games played, it is easy to see where the dissatisfaction comes from. Because of the apparent dissatisfaction with Jost, and because Nazem Kadri is out as well, some people in Habs Nation are suggesting the possibility of Max Domi becoming the Colorado Avalanche next best center. Well, obviously, not over McKinnon, but over those other two guys, Kadri and, of course, Tyson Jost. There's also this other article here from the Denver Post, where they talk about how the Colorado Avalanche recently lost Mikko Rantanen after a really, really bad exchange that ended up in him going into the boards, doing something bad to his collarbone, and he's gonna be out for a few weeks. That absolutely sucks. Rantanen was out last year, he's out this year, and what is an elite player in this league has now been sidelined for the second year in a row because of an injury that, probably shouldn't have happened here. But because of the fact that Rantanen is indeed out, this article brings up the idea that Tomas Tatar is probably the most valuable guy from the Montreal Canadiens that the Avalanche could use. So let's talk a little bit about that here. Tatar, Domi, one of these two, both of these, to Colorado? Now obviously, taking a look at that at face value, you have to take a look at the potential return, and that is what the Colorado Avalanche probably might not be able to fulfill all the way. They have some really good prospects, a lot of really good first-round talent, but these are the kind of guys that I'm not necessarily too sure the Avalanche would want to part with. Would the value be equal for a guy like Alex Newhook or a Byram if they were to be included for a trade in one, if not both, of Domi and Tatar coming back? Yeah, I think it would be sort of fair if you're able to play out the cards, right, and add a few other picks and all that. But at the same time, I'm not sure on the Avalanche's willingness to trade those players away. Now, the market has been set, and we know that. That has been the idea that people have brought up for a long time. Well, long time, I say. What I mean is about, a few days or so. Blake Coleman got yourself a first-round pick and a first-round prospect. Jason Zucker got a top D-man prospect, Galchenyuk, and a first-round pick. Tyler Toffoli yesterday got the LA Kings in his deal, Tim Schaller, a second-round pick, and Tyler Madden. Now, granted, Tyler Madden was a third-round guy back in 2018, but He's playing like a first-round talent. He is a legitimately underrated prospect, and he's absolutely tearing up the NCAA. So when you take a look at the market and how things have been established, a potential Tatar or Domi trade, for Newhook at least, doesn't seem too far out of the question. All these other trades have netted some really good prospects. Madden, Foote, Addison, these guys are no joke. And when you're trading away players like Coleman and Zucker and Toffoli, Coleman is obviously not at the same level as Zucker and Toffoli, and you're still able to get players like that coming back, it's easy to see where the market is, and it's easy to see that a Tatar would get you some really good assets. Same thing with a Domi. Coleman is a center, which puts his trade value at the same starting point as a Max Domi, positionally speaking, and Coleman got some really good assets back. So, to me, the idea of a Newhook or, dare I say, maybe even a Byram coming back in a trade like this doesn't seem too outlandish, especially if the Colorado Avalanche want to capitalize on what they've built today. Rantanen is going to be out for a few weeks, but he'll most likely come back for the playoffs if the timeline works out correctly. Well, they actually said he's going to be out for weeks. They didn't specify how many weeks, but if it's like 4 weeks or whatever, that should be okay, right? But if the Avalanche want to go the same route the Canucks did, where they bet on the now, they want to go further now, then they part with their future. They part with some of the prospects they have that haven't made significant NHL impacts yet, and they acquire some good players today. Domi and Tatar, cap-wise, it's not going to be super easy to fit in, but at the same time, the Avalanche are one of the most free teams in terms of money in the NHL, so I don't really think they're going to have a problem with that. It's just interesting to think about both of these players being involved in these rumors, where both sides can really please their fan bases. The Avs, on one hand, would add 2 legit top 6 forwards in this situation, and the Canadiens would be getting at least a really good prospect or a pick as well. That's something that I think I could be on board with, especially on the idea that maybe Domi doesn't re-sign with Colorado and he comes back to Montreal. That would be really cool. Same thing with Tomas Tatar next year. Well, obviously, of course, Domi is an RFA, so he doesn't have that flexibility to the same extent, but you get what I'm saying. The Avalanche have some good prospects, and they have some good-ish young guys on the team too. Tyson Jost is a guy who they have been dissatisfied with, but at the same time, I still think he does have a solid NHL future. The guy's only 21, for crying out loud. It's not probably the smartest move to completely write him off just yet. The guy has so much room to improve and grow into a better NHL player. It's just that for what the Avalanche are building on their team today, I could totally see why they would have expected more out of this player. But of course, scenarios like that open the door to more trade opportunities, and especially with Rantanen being out, I could see Tatar being a player they're interested in. Once he comes back, having Tatar and Rantanen, and Landeskog, and McKinnon, and maybe a Domi or whatever, would really shake up this Avalanche team, and what would have been a pretty okay playoff run would turn into the potential to be a really, really great playoff run, if you get what I'm saying. So, from my perspective, it makes sense to see why the Avalanche and the Canadiens would both be interested in something like this, but this is just all speculation. Of course, Bergevin just happened to be at the Avalanche and the Lightning game watching that one, so we'll see if things go on further as the trade deadline approaches. Obviously, Pagnotta yesterday talked about how the Canadiens are probably going to stay quiet, so maybe if that stays true, then this Domi, Tatar, Avalanche stuff has no vein of actually happening. So hopefully that's not the case. As I said, I want the Canadiens to go out there and make some trades in one way or another, but if they go down this avenue, I think that would be a really, really, really good choice. So comment down below what you think in the comments below. Domi, Tatar, Colorado, what do you think about it? What do you think of the return? Does a Newhook get involved? Does a Bowen Byram get involved? Is that even enough on a package for Montreal to get rid of these two players? Hope you enjoyed this video. and bye.